Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us?
I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary.
Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us.
The words you just heard were written by Frederick Douglass and spoken by his descendants that remind us that there's no other holiday more symbolic of American patriotism than the 4th of July. But today it's being celebrated as other symbols of this nation's past are toppling down. We're seeing the removal of Confederate statues by both protesters and by state leadership. Mississippi stripping the Confederate symbol from its flag. And even that statue outside New York's famed Natural Museum of History, you know, the statue of Theodore Roosevelt on horseback, flanked by an indigenous man and an African man. Yeah, that's coming down too. Which may explain why Donald Trump chose the most grandiose symbol of U.S. imperialism on Earth to usher in a very on-brand star-spangled spectacle. Complete with fireworks and military flyovers, it was Trump's predictable way of throwing red meat to his base. The cult-like following he so desperately needs at the ballot box as he tanks in the polls. But let's talk some truth here. Mount Rushmore isn't exactly the innocent ode to our founding fathers as described in our textbooks, and it's high time we disrupt that false narrative that far too many people believe. The landmark famously or infamously depicts 4 of our America's celebrated presidents on granite slope over the Black Hills of South Dakota. But what's missing from those glossy brochures is that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson enslaved black people. And Abraham Lincoln, although he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, also approved the largest mass execution in U.S. history, the hanging of 38 Dakota Indians. And Teddy Roosevelt once wrote, quote, "I don't go so as far to think that the only good Indians are dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of 10 are." These are the 4 men who are immortalized on a tourist trap that erases Indigenous history. Their faces chiseled by the sculptor Gutzon Borglum, who was intensely entangled in the politics of the KKK, attending Klan rallies and even serving on a few Klan committees. And so choosing this spot, built on sacred indigenous land that was seized illegally, and at a time when America finally faces a reckoning over its ugly racial history, wasn't just a wink at white supremacy. This was a rallying call.
Our nation is witnessing a merciless campaign to wipe out our history, defame our heroes, erase our values, and indoctrinate our children. Angry mobs are trying to tear down statues of our founders, deface our most sacred memorials, and unleash a wave of violent crime in our cities.
Trump's speech was an ugly and callous disregard of demands from social activists as well as health experts. Very few people in that crowd last night were wearing masks, perhaps taking their cue from South Dakota's mask-averse Republican Governor Kristi Noem. Here's what she said just days before the event.
We told those folks that have concerns that they can stay home. But those who want to come and join us, we'll be giving out free face masks if they choose to wear one, but we won't be social distancing.
But just before last night's event, we learned that Trump campaign aide Kimberly Guilfoyle, who's also the girlfriend of Donald Trump Jr., tested positive for COVID-19. She traveled to South Dakota with Don Jr., and the White House claims that he tested negative. But the virus wasn't the only risk last night. Fireworks went off despite a decade-long ban on pyrotechnics at Mount Rushmore because of concerns over wildfires and groundwater pollution. A ban Trump flippantly reversed back in January.
What can burn? It's stone. You know, it's stone. It's great. So nobody knew why. They just said environmental reasons. So I called up our people, and within about 15 minutes, we got it approved, and you're going to have your first big fireworks display at Mount Rushmore.
And so here we are, celebrating the birth of a nation, independence for white men, at a site described by one Native American activist as, quote, a symbol of white supremacy. Trump choosing Mount Rushmore for a 4th of July campaign stop is just like when he chose Tulsa, the site of the 1921 massacre against Black Americans, for his Juneteenth weekend rally. It's that cruel, tired, and familiar jab to Black, brown, and indigenous people that makes the shrinking MAGA voter feel as big as a 60-foot face of a colonizing slave owner. So, Anand, I want to turn to you. I found an interesting tweet that you sent this week where you essentially said the people who led us into this mess will not lead us out of it. So clearly you have no confidence in this administration to lead us out of these poor economic numbers. What does this look like? So let's say a Democrat gets in the White House in November. What does economic recovery look like when we're still battling a global pandemic and still dealing with the fallout of COVID-19?
Well, first of all, the word recovery means kind of going back to where you were before. And I don't think anybody except oligarchs can afford to go back to where America was before, because America wasn't working for most people before the pandemic either. You know, on this July 4th and all July 4ths, if you want to understand what's happening in the economy, look at what's happening on race, right? So Mount Rushmore yesterday, the president is engaging in this age-old game, which is selling white people the hooch of supremacy in the hope of getting them drunk so they don't notice that he is stealing their stuff and the stuff of Black people and the stuff of all people except oligarchs who are doing the stealing. And what we've seen is a rhetoric of recovery, of paycheck protection, of this and that, masking the reality that in this crisis, as often happens in crisis, the powerful have rushed in to commandeer the benefits of crisis. We saw it when Ruth's Chris, as you reported, like got the paycheck protection money. We saw it. We see it now with Black Lives Matter and a bunch of companies in America putting on, frankly, corporate blackface while refusing to pay Black people more, hire more Black people, actually change any of the tax avoidance they do that hurts marginalized people disproportionately. And we see it in the return to these economic reinvention committees of Eric Schmidt, Bill Gates, billionaires being brought in to reinvent the plutocratic America that has left us so vulnerable as a host to this virus.